Good evening, all. We are nearly ready, I think, on this very, very hot day. I shall turn the camera on in a minute. So for those of you who don't know who I am, haven't seen me before, you can have a quick peek and just sort of, to do the formal introduction, that sort of thing. It's a bit strange, this webinar thing, because I'm sort of used to talk face-to-face to people. So talking to an empty screen as such is a bit weird, really. But hopefully we'll all get through it. Anyway, I've got some interesting stuff, I think, anyway, for all of us. And I'm planning on not to take up too much of your time either, because it's been a long day. It's been hot for everyone. And I'm sure that after sort of, half an hour, 45 minutes, we've probably had enough, all of us, and are ready to take our dogs out before we put them all to bed, that sort of thing. So I should just switch this camera on because we're nearly ready. There we go. I think we're all used to peeking into people's front rooms everywhere. This is the spare little office / guest bedroom. So yeah, we're all getting very intimate and very private nowadays, even on telly. So the plan is that I'm going to just share my screen in a minute with you guys, and then officially all welcome you to this webinar. I'm afraid you have to make do with me tonight, but as I have said, I've sort of hopefully put together some interesting stuff in terms of some of the new research which is out there. Some of it is actually not that new, but it takes a little bit of time to filter through to us deadly people. So if we are more or less all ready to start, then I shall just switch this off in a minute. Now we've waved to you all and says thank you very much for attending on this evening. Before I get the slides up, I'll probably also just like to say that there's no need to sit and sort of write things down. You can do, but the slides and this webinar will be available afterwards, and you should get a links at later on. So don't do as I did with the last one I attended, sat there and took pictures of the screen, because they didn't say to me until quite late that actually we are going to give you the slides. So no need to do that. Hopefully you're just going to concentrate and focus on what we've got on here tonight. And also it's my hope that we could end up doing some more of these webinars, not just with me, but with other people, people who's got some great expertise somewhere. And, some subjects, there are loads out there, dog related, health related, all sorts of specialist subjects. So if anyone's got any suggestions for that, please do, fire away and let me know about that. Yeah, then we shall just get on with it, really. I'm just going to turn this video on, as I said. Sorry, turn it off, and then I shall share the screen with you so we can all see some stuff here. Oh dear. let's have a quick look. Chrome tab, we'll do the right one here, that helps. Right, now the whole theme of this is, of course, improving dog health through diet. And, you know, basically, you know, what can we do? How much can we do? And if you haven't already guessed it, we can actually do quite a lot. But if I just get this one here sorted so I get my presenting screen on, present, then we can actually see the whole thing like that. That looks a bit better. So very briefly about, you know, short introduction, which is sort of more or less done a little bit about me, very short about me. I have got a bit of education, Master of Science Agriculture, and I, for all my sins, have got a bit of background in nutrition as well, starting out with both horses, cattle, and also with dogs. And then I'm also, for all my sins, a dog breeder trainer, known as it says, and I put down 20 years plus. And when some people see that, they probably think, oh, that's quite a long time. And I'm thinking, oh, that makes me feel quite old, actually. It's a bit like these boxes where they want you to tick your age, and you kind of like just always there at, you know, 40 plus and then nothing else. That would be great. So yeah, I have got a little bit of background, you know, practical experience with dogs, and I do also say that you know, in terms of food and stuff like that, they quite often have to you know, act a bit like guinea pigs, and because I do have dogs of various ages, so it's quite handy to see what sort of, you know, physically happens if I put one food through them, you know, in terms of the energy levels and that sort of thing. So that was a very brief introduction about me. Now we're going to start out with, you know, calories in dog food. What's that all about? And then a bit about, you know, the actual nutrition side of things. You know, what the research shows about that, and also joint health and diet, getting right from the start. That's actually quite a lot, you know, that there's some research there which is quite mind-blowing, I think. And if there's any breeders out there, or someone with you know, with a puppy, or just about to get a puppy, or have got, you know, one, then it's actually quite mind-blowing to think about that we can really, you know, affect that from the start, really. So let's crack on with it. Now the complete diet, which we have, I mean, the thing is also, when we're talking about diet on other animals, you know, again, going back to my background here, now we know from studies from many years ago, actually, and we did studies with the farm animals, probably because we started, there's a lot of money and it's production animals, so we started out with them, and we know that we can affect quite a lot of things through the diet. So with my whole area expertise, you know, dairy cattle, it's quite simple. We can feed to change the milk fat percentage. We can feed to change the milk protein, raw milk, and, you know, we can feed to change the overall milk yield. All that through feeding. We know it from horses as well. We know for you guys who's got horses, that if you have a horse that needs to do a little bit of competition sometimes, well, quite frankly, it needs perhaps a little bit more than good quality hay and grass, although you can get a long way with that. But you know, especially if we're talking more competitive side of things, also if you've got youngsters, that sort of thing, we know that we need to feed them a bit different to you know, to help improve their performance, for instance. We also know, and this is from my other background, I did artificial insemination with horses, you know, and did all that in Germany. We know down there, we know that we can actually also feed to improve fertility to some extent. I know that they're doing studies with that, and you know, also in terms of, you know, when we talk about humans. So, you know, it's quite simple. You know, if you ask me, you know, of course we can do something, and we can help our dogs to improve. I mean, the question is, why haven't we actually looked more into it before now? Well, I think we sort of have, but it's taken a long time, and it's simply because that when we talk about these guys here, I mean, these are, you know, farm animals, and there's a lot of money into it, so it makes sense. But obviously, with all our other animals, you know, our pets, it's a different kettle of fish. But of course, we all want to do the best for dogs and cats, you know, and the rest of our pets. So we are much more interested now, also because we, you know, we want for them to have the you know, the best health that they can for as long as possible. So now, when we talk about the complete diet, I mean, this is a slide which I think we need to have in there, because we don't just sort of make, you know, no company out there make out, you know, regulations, you know, they don't make up the actual, you know, what's in the food. That there are regulations for it, and there are legal requirements for complete and commercially made diets. And here in Europe, these are mainly EU regulated, and they look like, you look at things like pet safety and labeling and claims. That means that, you know, you can't put on the bag that if you feed your golden retriever this food, it will turn into a Alsatian, for instance. Those sort of things. They make sure that you know, you can't just claim all sorts of things on there. Now, the other FEDIAF, the European Pet Food Industry Federation, that's quite an interesting thing, because they've got quite a lot of punch. They are self-regulating, but they are actually allowing, they come with a lot of input to the EU. And the next thing here, you know, the Nutritional Analytic Science Working Group, those are, you know, a board of quite clever people, which are independent ones, although they're obviously, you know, made to work for this, you know, they're working for them, and they're looking at, you know, developing nutritional guidelines for cats and dogs, and they basically sift through all the you know, all the research out there, and as soon as that becomes available, and obviously is proven sound, then they make sure that that is going to be applied and hopefully, you know, siphon through and filter through in terms of making improvements to the food. In the US, they've got their own regulations. So you've got the FDA, and you've got the Pet Food Institutes, and the Pet Food Institutes are a bit like the European Pet Food Industry Federation. They look at all the research as well. So we're not just making up, you know, nobody's making up these things. And it's important also to think about these regulations, because that means that, you know, there are certain regulations in terms of the minimum requirement for, you know, the amount of fat in a commercial diet, you know, off the shelf. And the reason why I'm saying that is because that sometimes you hear people, they ask you questions, you know, if you have a dog that has been diagnosed from the vets with some sort of, you know, dietary condition, they might want to find an alternative. They're trying to look for an alternative than the veterinary diets. Well, the veterinary diets, there's obviously a reason for them, and that's because that they can make them different to the commercial off-the-shelf ones. And so sometimes if the vet says you need to have a diet with a very, very low fat content, that is not always something you can get off the shelf, because if you feed a normal dog that kind of diet, that would actually long term not benefit at all for this dog, and might actually cause problems if someone by accident just took that off the shelf. So there's a reason why some of these diets are veterinary diets, and you can get them at the vets and not sort of off the shelf. So, but that's all regulated. Now, this is a slide everyone says, oh, don't put a killer slide in like that, because there's a lot of numbers and things like that. But it's just to tell you, because nowadays we're talking about calories. I mean, it used to be that people were talking a lot about, when you talk about dog food, is that, how much protein is in there, how much fat, but basically people were mainly focusing on protein. And we're not really focusing on that so much. What we do now, and how the diets are made up is that we're looking at the calorie requirements for dogs, really, just like we look at calorie requirements for us. And there are obviously two extremes there. One which is extremely thin, and then one which is clearly a big light down the bottom there. So. And this is the same process. So whenever they're doing all these calculations and they formulate a food, it's the same thing that basically you sit and do. Now they do have computers for this kind of stuff, but this is also that if some of you dog food geeks out there would really like to try and very specifically make a calculation about your individual dog's need, then you kind of like get that here. So you get that on a slide here. Now, the first one was the resting, and then there's all these different known life stage and corresponding factors, and these are all the things. And this is also to do with why there are different feeds out there, because the dogs have got different needs. So the first slide was really, that is the absolute minimum requirement for a dog, to keep it going, basically breathe, walk about a little bit. So, and these are then, the requirements that you have to add on if your dogs are doing anything more than just breathe and eat and sleep. And you can see here that, there's quite a lot of extra to add on, but also some of them will vary quite a lot, even for the weight loss and the weight gains, and you've got the poppies down here. So if anyone feels inclined to sit down and really would like to sort of, make calculations, those this is actually the way that you can do it, or you can cheat. There are actually luckily things like that out there. Now, this is sort of the international veterinary association, and they have again made an average body condition, average body condition, with the average weight, and then it actually gives you the actual calories a day. This is kind of like a little bit like when you look at the feed guide, that sort of thing. We're looking more and more on these calories, and we're doing that because we've got problems with overweight with dogs. And of course, we also have got the other scales. So the ones that might be sitting and working with rescue dogs, they obviously see some cases which are like quite in the opposite scale, like the one we saw before. So the beautiful thing about calories is that we now know, right? Okay, this is what we need, and this is how we get. This is what all our dogs need. So, but
how do we get the calories? Now, calories are actually quite a simple thing. The three nutrients that makes up calories of dog food, and that's all. There's only three things: like carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So if you take any sort of dog food, whatever you make it yourself, or whatever you bought, that is where your calories will be coming from: carbohydrates, fat, or the protein. So, and it's important to note here. So that if you decrease one or two, another one will increase. So if you want more carbohydrate, then one of these two here has to leave way, give way. And the same thing is, if you want less fat, then you will have either more protein and or more carbohydrates. So you really only got these three things to play around with a little bit. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. If you get people saying, "Oh, I want a low-fat diet, low protein," and actually we don't really want many carbohydrates either. That can be a little bit of a difficult thing to try and figure out how to get around that. Now, if we look at the individual ones, the individual calories here, which might be of interest, the fat or the high fat. These things are all important depending on obviously what kind of activity your dogs are doing. The high fat, it's not bad with a high fat diet. Great for endurance activity like sledge dogs, long distance racing, and gun dogs. So endurance sport, also good for can also be good for agility. And this next thing again, and that what makes it slightly interesting as well, is that the research has actually shown that some breeds are better at converting fat into energy. So we know that from this research that when we talk about something like Greenland dogs or the basically breeds who've all developed and worked and lived in climates, very cold climates, basically, those ones, they're very good at converting fat into energy, and that's got to do with that over these years where the breed has developed, and also where it's been living close to people. They basically had to be very efficient in terms of surviving in these kind of climates, and also if you couple up that with the fact that they, at the same time, had to work, then of course there isn't much choice for them. So very quickly they found out that these dogs breeds, the clever dogs, they were the one who would survive because they could convert the fat into the energy much better than others. So that's what they did. There's also downside about the fat. If you feed, basically over a long time, if you feed a dog which doesn't require a lot of fat, because it's just got a low activity level. If you feed it too much fat, it can cause pancreatitis. So that's worth bearing in mind. So unless your dog is actually having quite a high activity level, there's no need to suddenly drastically increase the fat intake and go on a very high fat diet. Carbohydrates, they probably suffer a little bit at the moment from bad press, maybe someone would say. They are not usually essential nutrients. So in theory, when we talk about dog food, you could probably, you could actually feed dogs without any carbohydrates in there, to a certain extent. They do have an excellent nutrient value, especially during lactation. to make lactose. So quite a useful one if you know, if you bitches is obviously having a litter of pups. So maybe having a you know, a diet which is extremely low on carbohydrates, because you know that obviously is not going to help your bitch producing the lactose. It's also good in that sense that, you know, if you've got dogs which are more of a type of sprinting dogs, or you know, greyhounds and those sort of things, but also other types of dogs that have activities, you know, some sort of working activities, it does have the nice effect that it's easier, you know, to replenish the liver glucogen, just pronounce that correctly. So it basically just help your dog to recover and not be so tired the next day, really. Also, we must remember that fiber is actually a source of carbohydrate. So fiber can obviously, or is important for weight loss, and it is good for colon health, also for dogs as for us. So carbohydrate is not all bad at all. So sometimes in some weight loss diets, you might see that the carbohydrate side of things is slightly elevated, you know, slightly more carbohydrate in there level compared to you know, some of the other ones, especially the fat one. Now, where do we get the protein from? You know, we briefly sort of, you know, talked about the protein in terms of, you know, as I mentioned, that this protein was something that we always sort of used to look at a lot. There's many, you know, there's a couple of ways, or many ways actually, we can get protein, and it's worth noting where you know, this source of protein is coming from, because the dogs can't digest all of it equally well. Now, the personal favorite, and this should be a favorite for eggs, really. You know, eggs, and again, that must go back to the times, you know, back to evolution times, and also because, you know, dogs traditionally, when they became domesticated and decided to live with us, they you know, they probably lived on protein which was easily available, that you know, we had around us as human beings. We traditionally always had eggs around us. You look at something like chicken and turkey, that is very high as well. So chicken gets a little bit of bad press as well. There can be some dogs out there who may have an allergic reaction to it. The thing is, chicken is not just chicken, you know, and that's another reason why you know, some of these biological values actually varies a lot, because is it pure meat, or is it in a powder form, or is it meal, and how much of the chicken is in there? You know, it's the same thing for the fish. Which kind of fish is it? You can see that can vary a little bit, you know. 76, but there are somewhere in between as well, 92, and that's basically if you feed, you know, if you stick that in, then you know, you kind of like, you know, take out 79% of what you put in there, really. Beef is a little bit lower, but again, that can also have to do with what kind of, you know, where it's coming from. Basically, again, always make sure when you look at the labels and stuff like that, make sure, regardless of what, you know, the highest value, biological value, will always be from muscle meat, or what we call pure meat. We can also get protein from other places, not just from other things, not just animal protein. There are actually protein found in grains and other things, you know. But again, the variation here is perhaps, you know, is even bigger than with the animal protein. And that can be all sorts of reasons for that. The quality of the rice, it varies a lot because some of these values have been measured on white rice, brown rice, all the different kinds of rice. Same goes for wheat. I mean, it's, you go from 49% up to 60. Peas, there's a bit in there as well. Corn and maize, probably one of the ones who could score the lowest, but also go up to 54. So all to do with the quality of the actual grain, and also the process of it all. So that is quite a little bit of an insecure place to get the protein from, and the dogs. Other factors when we're looking about on calories, daily energy requirements of dogs vary according to breed, level of training, exercise type, and the weather. Very, very. So we say like today, when it's warm, very warm, and the dogs are sort of just not doing too much, then quite often, you can see a lack of appetite in dogs. And people start to worry a bit. As long as they drink, then that's good, of course. But yeah, I mean, the weather, that does obviously play a part in the actual daily energy requirements for your dogs, and also the breeds, of course. Then, of course, we have seen that performance in dogs, again, going back to this, been positively correlated with increased fat intake. Some breeds digest specific fats better than others, and that's from a study, Killing Wells, all going back to 96. And they basically, again, going back to they like to look very much upon breeds like huskies, racing huskies, that sort of thing, because obviously there's a lot of mushers out there. So there's a lot of people who would love to try and increase their the health of the dogs and also their performance. Another group of dogs that they very often look at it would be greyhounds, but short spurts of energy requirements are different to the endurance ones, where the performance dogs, the longer performances and longer distance, and the endurance ones do better on the increased fat intake. This also includes working dogs. Short sprints and spurts, that sort of thing. The racing greyhounds typically will have a more of a starchy diet, and they tend to do better on those ones. Obesity in joints, yeah, we're on to what the research has shown now, really, about what we can do and how we can improve the diet here, and help them as much as we can. Now, that dog on the left there, that was a picture I took of, I went to my local vet with one of my dogs. She was in for a check, had a scan to see if there was any puppies in there. And in the waiting room, this dog sat there, and I don't know if you have got any ideas about how old this dog is, but it transpired it was 6 years old. So kind of like a dog in its best age. And it was very big. Now, the owners, obviously, they were concerned, and obviously they were clearly enrolled in a weight loss program at the local vet. So that's the good news. But it's quite simple, that we do have obesity as the biggest threat to the health. This is what the general BBA guidance says at the moment. And what we need to think about here as well is there is an increased risk with rapid weight gain, especially within the first 6 months of age. So that's going back to our puppies here. So this isn't something I've made up. This is again a study. I'll give you the reference to the studies a bit later. They'll be on another slide. But
it's you know, we don't really want to have these very, very big, you know, very roly-poly puppies. I was going to say, you know, fat puppies, but they are better off to be on the leaner side, you know, quite basically. Now, they have done a big calorie restriction lifetime study, and they look to do that in Labradors, of course, or golden retrievers. But this one here is, of course, done in Labradors because they are just, most of them are happily taking part in these studies. And they basically x-rayed all the dogs in the study at 8 years for evaluation. And they looked at you know, the two groups, and they came to the conclusion that the dogs that were giving 25 less calories, they had less prevalence or less severe arthritis than the control group. So that is, you know, something to you know, to think about, really. So again, you know, it's the conclusion of that, and here's the reference down there if you want like to see it, is keeping the dogs lean is an important factor for joint health, and also just the general, should we say, well-being of the dog. There's a second picture of this dog here, and this dog here, actually, if you look here, the weight was really a problem for it, because down here on his hind leg, it actually had caused pressure sores on it. So it had problems, you know. It was lying down, it you know, it couldn't quite find rest, and it was clearly in discomfort. And then you know, when it sat up, then you know, that was a bit of an effort as well. So but hopefully, you know, hopefully they're on to have moved on, and the dog has actually lost some weight. So now, how to find out? I mean, we've had a lot, again, you know, where we used to have going back to, we used to have the emphasis on the protein in the dog food. We used to have, could we say, very much the emphasis on how much, you know, what's the weight of the dog. And yes, that's obviously, yes, but that's only part of it, really. What we are moving on to, we rather talk about the body score condition, or body condition score, actually. And you might have seen this before. You know, most dog food companies actually have some sort of variation of this slide. But this is actually where the original one, where it's all stemming from. I personally can find it a little bit difficult to, you know, just score like that. One thing they do say is, and this is the general veterinary advice as well, is that we should really, you know, control weight our dogs like once a week, maybe, or at least once a month. Now, we don't need to take them to the vet to do that. We can actually, you know, if you've got, you know, some scales at home, you can actually, you know, just get on your scales and, you know, stand with your dog, you know, hold it in your arms if you can, and then you stand on your scales by yourself, and then you deduct the two results, and then you've got the weight of the dog. Just to give you a heads up on that one. But yeah, I generally find it a little bit difficult because I think, you know, the blur thing, I think mine are probably like between a 4 and a 5, which I would have thought, depending a little bit about, you know, how much physical work they're doing. The other thing they do as well, you know, rather than to look on weight and the body scoring, is they do look at a muscle score. So, and this is one of my dogs when you know, his peak time anyway. So they typically will look at, you know, the muscles, the actual muscles at the dog, because, you know, one thing is if the dog is skinny, but is it skinny with muscles? You know, is it, you know, is it well muscled up? Because a dog which is, you know, has got, well, you know, quite a lot of muscle and is well muscled up, you know, that generally is not always an underweight dog. So I was trying to show it a little bit here with my own dog.
Just to give you an example. Now, this is something that we can think about as well. This is an example which is this is calculated by stick it through a computer program actually. When you got a 10-kilo puppy here, he was probably a bit more than 10 kilo at that time. That was one of my pups, that one there. And it's just to give you an example about, adding a bit of extra to the diet, because it's easily done. You can easily get extra added on. This is just 120 grams complete puppy diet food. And then we'd think, well, we'll just add a little bit of extra tripe. I do know that some people like to add a little bit extra, 20 grams of tripe. 4 chicken wings to this one here. This is sort of, within the day. So not, very realistic. Now, looking at the tripe and the chicken wings, they already provide 24% of the total calorific amount. So that's quite a lot just for that alone. And when that's been running through a computer program, and using some of the first slides that I show you in terms of how to calculate these things out, that's by adding these extra things. That diet there, 120 grams of the complete puppy diet plus the 20 grams of tripe and the 4 chicken wings, that actually already push the diet over with 29% over the total requirement of the day, and the calories from fat alone is 51%, 50.1, 51.8% actually. That's quite a lot from fat alone. But what is a little bit worrying here is that because you add the extra things, that knocks off or knocks away the balanced of the complete balanced diet wording, really. It knocks these two off completely. So it actually ends up being a deficient diet in both calcium and phosphorus. So if adding things like that, then it's perhaps is required that a bit more of calculation, because we end up with a problem here in terms of we suddenly make a healthy diet or a complete diet into something which is no longer a complete diet. So that's really something to think about. Now, this is also, and why that is very important, is that this is again from a study with large breed puppies, and we know there that these studies is less energy, calcium and phosphorus levels should be lower, and the calcium phosphorus levels should be lower than standard small breed puppy food. So we look at calcium to phosphorus ratio of 1.2 to 1. Get this wrong, and it really will affect bone development. And this is probably something that we really need to think about as breeders. And you may ask yourself, why haven't everyone got a large breed puppy food? Well, I can't answer that. I can guess maybe it's got to do with money. It costs money to develop and guarantee and put out new recipes of dog food. So that might be it. I don't know. I only know that the lady who talked about this is Professor Claire Rushbeck and she's chief of neurology, and she is part of the Fitzpatrick surgery down there. They've got a big team working down, apart from Fitzpatrick himself and the fantastic vet things that we've seen on telly. So he actually has got a team, and they do some serious work down there. So yeah, again, another important thing here, puppies don't have a mechanism to protect against too much calcium. Supplementing additional calcium with vitamin D results in decreased ossification activity, delaying normal ossification.
So yeah, so basically, if we just shove in a diet with too much calcium, that will affect the skeleton and the growth of the puppies. So, and this is again, again, she was a talk I attended, which is also available online. This was something that was very dear to her, and she repeated this time and time again. So obviously, as vets, we'll have to. They obviously seen some problems, so perhaps we should take note of that. So overall, again, poor diet of obesity results in irreversible skeleton changes with long-lasting effect. So yeah, don't skip on it. Again, there was just a quick one here with the large breed puppy food and the normal one, which is a clever one to do. I'm just going to quickly round up a little bit. I appreciate that obviously, it's a huge subject, and there's loads of things that we can do with these things. As I say, the plan is to have some more webinars and really dive into stuff here, special subjects. Please do get in touch if you want to. If you've got some ideas about which ones to hold, some subjects, there might be some of you out there which are really totally specialist in something. Could be anything from with regards to dogs and overall well-being. I'm up for it. Any aquacultures out there, that's interesting. But also here, just to finish off here with these slides here, places to look for more information. There are actually some good ones out there. World Small Animal Veterinary Associations, where some of these slides have been taken from, the picture slides. They do have guides on global nutrition guidelines, and they also have webinars. And the other one, the European Pet Food Industry, they have, and there's a link to that one, some very comprehensive nutritional guides for dogs and cats. And it will literally explain in a very good way and very clear for everyone, anything from all the different vitamins, minerals, what they do, and which effect they have got in the food. So I can thoroughly recommend that if you want to know much about that, or a lot more about it. Also, there are of course lots of research publications out there published by various universities, and put that on there because I just want to try and see and hopefully get you guys away from. I know some of you will not do that anyway, but all the anecdotal stuff out there, which suddenly becomes the things to do. Like I don't know why, but for some reason, some people started to use a lot of coconut oil and add that to the diets. That coconut oil, not sure why, but all I know is about coconut oil is that it's absolutely full of fatty acids, saturated fatty acids, should I say, rather. So it's saturated rather than unsaturated. And normally, we, any nutritional people and vets will, have a bit of caution towards, a lot of saturated fat. There are other alternatives out there. But yeah, it very quickly sort of starts and then things sort of rolls on a little bit. It's great to dive into these things, but always try and just double check and see where all the where the actual info is coming from, really. As I said a couple of times, get in touch. Very welcome to do that. If you want to know more, or if you want to just basically, if you have any ideas or anything like that, then or webinars, you're very welcome to do so. I would love to just hear about your any sort of ideas or anything like that. So yes,